Hello and thanks for joining in with me today. My name is Anna Hellman and today I want to talk to you about acrylic blocks. If you are a stamper or a card maker, you probably know all about these, but I wanted to revisit a topic that we don't talk about very often, and maybe you can learn a few things today. And for those of you who are getting started with card making or interested in starting, hopefully you're going to learn some things here to help you make a good choice when you decide to purchase some acrylic blocks. So first, let's talk about what these are. They are exactly what we call them. They are blocks made out of acrylic, and we use them to mount our rubber cling stamps or our photopolymer stamps to them so that we have a nice surface that we can hold on to. It's going to give a good even press over the top of that stamp to get a good image on your projects. Now, why are these awesome? If you went back and looked at card making and stamping, 20 years ago, you are going to find, I'm not sure if these existed 20 years ago. If so, they were probably just on the horizon. But what you found were stamps that were attached to wooden blocks. And I don't even have very many of these in my collection anymore. I do have this one I use to personalize my cards that has this post on it. But why the switch from woodblock stamps to acrylic block stamps? And there's several reasons. One, these are going to save you money on your stamp sets, because when you purchase a set, you're no longer paying for all of those wood blocks that you need to attach to every one of your stamps. In addition to saving money, you are going to save space because these don't take up as much space. Your cases are a lot smaller, your sets are a lot thinner. That is going to save space in your craft area, and we all know we want to save space in our craft area. Also, the absolute best part of these is you can see exactly where you are stamping to make sure you're getting your image in the right spot on your project. So we love the acrylic blocks. Love them, love them. Now let's talk about brands and styles. There are a lot of different acrylic blocks on the market. Now I'm a Stampin' Up demonstrator, so I use Stampin' Up blocks, but not necessarily just because that's what I sell. I use them because that's what I love. And I have a few different styles here to show you. Here are some I had purchased back in the day before I found Stampin' Up that have a grid line on one side and they have this wavy edge, and they are more of a square edge. It's not really very rounded. So these are some that I have. I do have a few like this that I did get through Stampin' Up, but they're more of a demonstrator supply item so that we can have them for classes at a reduced cost from buying the nice ones. But these have a square, sharp edge as well. There are a lot of different types and styles. So these are our blocks that you can purchase, and I'm going to talk about why I love them, because I really do. One, I love the sizes and shapes that are available because there's always one to fit my stamp that I need. I'm going to mention here in a minute another benefit with using our blocks and our products as far as the sizes go. So there's always a size or shape to fit what I need, which is fantastic. The second thing I really love is the thickness of our blocks. And I will flip these up on end so you can see this for yourself. So here is one of our standard Stampin' Up blocks. Here is one of those older ones I had in my collection. This is one of the reduced cost ones that I can get as a supply item. But you can see the varying thickness of these. Now, when I try and use these, which I don't very often, but when I need a lot of blocks, I get these out occasionally for classes. These are really hard to stamp with. When you get into the narrower sizes, it's harder to keep your fingers out of your project. You may end up with fingerprints or smudges. It's also easier to rock your block and get extra ink from your block itself on your project. With the nice thick block, you really have a lot more space to keep your fingers where they need to be and to not get extra ink on your project somehow. The other thing I absolutely love, this is my favorite, is this groove. You should be able to see that the block is wider on the sides, and then there is a groove that goes down in in the center of the edge. And that is the case on every one of the 4 edges of the block. And this makes it makes it really easy to hold on to it without having to grip very hard, because your fingers just sit in that little groove and you don't really have to squeeze. Other thing, it just makes it really comfortable. So if you're doing quite a bit of stamping, that really makes a difference after a while. This block right here, it's not comfortable to hold. It doesn't make my hand feel nice. And you want to feel nice when you're stamping, right? I think so. So just the feel of it is really nice. I love these blocks. Now, the last thing that I hinted around out here a second ago that I really love is with our sizes. If you are looking at stamp sets, either in our catalog or on our website, the block sizes are recommended right here in the description. So for this Beautiful Moments set, it says suggested clear blocks A, B, D, and E. Or for Grace's Garden, it's A, B, C, and D. So let's look at our block sizes quickly. And I'm going to bring in my complete set in the storage case, which I'll talk more about here in a second. And we'll show you the sizes, and I'm going to mention quickly how big each of these is. So if you have been needing like a really big block, a really small one, you're trying to decide what sizes you need, you can look at these and maybe pick out a size that works for you. So just quickly, we have our A block, the little guy, is 1 3/16 of an inch by 1 1/4. We have this one right here, G, is 2 1/2 by 3/4. We have B, 1 5/8 by 1 15/16. We have the F block is 4 7/8 by 6. The H block is 4 7/16 by 1 5/8. This is the I block, 5 7/8 by 2 1/4. C measures 2 by 2 1/4. D measures 2 7/8 by 2 11/16. E is 3 7/16 by 4 7/16. Now I did that quickly. Hopefully I did not mess any of those up. But those are the sizes that we have. And like I said, we always have one for the size that I need. Now this F block right here, I get some questions sometimes about really large stamps and how do you even mount that to a block? We do have this really large F block for your really large stamps. So you can see this right here. I'm going to talk about our storage case here in a second, but if you choose to get the complete set, you can actually save 10%, which is awesome. We all love to save money. So let's talk about, we're going to talk about storage, but before I forget, sometimes I get asked from people, if I were going to recommend a few blocks to start with, what would they be? And that is a tough question because it depends on what stamps you have. If you have a stamp set like this, you are going to need an F block or an alternative stamping device that I'm going to talk about here in a few minutes. But for most people and most stamps, if I were going to recommend 3 blocks to start with, I would recommend a D block and probably this H block and either a B or a C block. I do love the little A block for small stamps. It is a lifesaver. Using bigger blocks with smaller stamps is challenging. So I do love this one. I do use this one quite a bit. Occasionally I get out this F block, but to start out with, I love, love, love the D block, and then probably a B or C and maybe this H. Let's talk about storage. You can store your blocks in a drawer, in a basket, some kind of container near your stamping area. But what I love to store mine in the storage case. And things you want to keep in mind, you want to make sure you store them in a place where they're not going to bang around or slide around. I am going to see if I can show you this. I'll hold this up. Can you see the scratches? I think you can see the scratches on this block. And honestly, at times when I'm doing a lot of stamping, mine just kind of get thrown in a container here on my craft table. And that's the end result, is the scratches. So if you could put them somewhere they're not going to bang together, slide around, that's ideal. If they do lay together, you could put like a soft cloth between them to keep them from getting scratched. Or here's a really nice storage case option for our blocks. that has one space for each side. It keeps them safe, protected. They're not going to scratch. It looks nice. Here, I'll fold it shut and show you how this works. Has a little latch down here. Lock shut, so it looks nice. You can keep this in your craft area, sitting out if you need to, and it travels really well with this nice handle. So those are some things to think about with storing your blocks. Now let's talk about taking care of them. Now I mentioned storage is an important part of taking care of them, but what about cleaning them up? Now on a regular basis for cleaning, I like to use baby wipes. Is kind of my go-to. If I really want to get them clean, if I've gotten some little adhesive residue or a little sticky, I don't know where the little sticky globs come from, honestly, but they come from somewhere, that don't want to come off, then rubbing alcohol is my friend that helps get that off. Or I keep these little alcohol swabs. You can get these in the first aid section at your store. These are really great to get those little sticky globs off if your baby wipes are not doing the trick. When it comes to deep cleaning, every once in a while my blocks really need a good clean, especially after my big events where I have a lot of people stamping and using them. So I just shared this trick recently where you can put all of your blocks into a colander, or you can put them in your silverware rack in your dishwasher and wash them with your dishes, or you can run a separate cycle without if you prefer. But just use your regular soap. I do recommend you try this out with one of your blocks first, just to make sure your dishwasher isn't too hot or something like that. I don't think it would be, but just to be safe, it's a good idea. So this is a great way to clean up your blocks if you like. You can also hand wash them with some dishwashing detergent in your sink if you prefer. Now, one more thing before we go, I want to talk about some alternatives to using these clear acrylic blocks. So we have an official alternative of how to do your stamping that is a product on the market. Stampin' Up sells an amazing one. And then I'm going to talk about some unofficial substitutes in case you ever get somewhere and you don't have a stamping block and you're not sure how to do a project. If I've done this before, I've taken all my supplies, I get there, and the one thing I forgot was a stamping block. So I'm gonna give you some alternatives for things you could use in a pinch. So this is our official alternative. This is the Stamparatus. It is an amazing stamping tool. It's a stamping platform. It comes with 2 plates. These plates are the surfaces that you mount your stamps to. So you can see this one here. Here I'm going to bring in another stamp and show you. Usually what I do is I'll have my paper in place on the platform. I put my stamp on top where I want it. I rotate the plate over to pick up that stamp. Now I'm going to ink it and stamp. So with the 2 plates, you can see you can line up several. You can stamp this one, then this other one coordinates. I can stamp it in its appropriate spot. And this is just a really, really amazing tool. If you ever stamp and you don't get a complete image, with this tool, you can restamp in exactly the same place and fix it. You don't have to waste that paper. You don't have to start over. So I'm going to link here to my complete Stamparatus video where you can learn all about this tool, which is an alternative to using the acrylic blocks. Now, I have 2 Stamparatus in my collection. I have lots of acrylic blocks. I use different things for different purposes. I definitely still use both of them. So if you're thinking if you want one or the other, it's hard to say. I know a lot of people who've tried the Stamparatus and say they use it 100% of the time. So you can think about that a little bit. Now, as for my idea, let's say you are taking some stamping project somewhere and you get there and you forgot your block. What do? You remembered your ink and your paper and all your other stuff. Well, how are you going to do your stamping? So I have a couple of little ideas here. First, you basically just need something flat to mount your stamp to. So I'm looking around at things I have in my stamp collection, things you may have with you if you're doing some stamping, or things you may have around the house or wherever you're at. So you need something perfectly flat your stamp will mount to. Okay, I see something that is almost perfectly flat. It is a stamp pad. So I have done this before where I will mount my stamp to one side of my stamp pad. Then with my ink pad that I want to use, I ink it up, I stamp it on my paper, and this does work. Now you cannot see where you're stamping. It's a little bit of a shot in the dark, but that is an option. A stamp pad, now something else I have used before, because sometimes I have a punch with me wherever I'm at, is a punch. You can mount your stamp to a punch, do the same thing. Now, if you are wanting a little bit better option, the best thing I've found that is just kind of an everyday around the house item is a clear glass. So with this, and it depends on if they're flat on the bottom or not, because they're not always, this one has a flat area over most of the surface of the bottom. You can mount that and stamp through and see exactly where you're stamping. So that's pretty handy. Now, if I get into a stamp this large with this glass I have right here, looks like this one will just barely fit. If I had a larger one, it would not mount level, so it probably wouldn't stamp very well. But those are a couple of ideas if you get in a pinch and need something besides an acrylic block. So thanks for joining in today. I hope you learned a lot about acrylic blocks. I hope this gets you thinking about some things that will help your stamping and your crafting. You can find links to the products that I used, as well as more information about acrylic blocks, using the link below in the video description. While you're there, make sure you subscribe and then hit the little bell to get notifications anytime I share new videos. Please like and comment and share this video to help me to keep providing free content for all of you. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you again soon.